Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today for another video on a very important topic. And this video is the second video regarding how to manage the extreme stressors and demands for back to school this year of 2022, if you're watching it in this year. But in general, this video will provide an overview for dealing with mental health, as well as overwhelming amounts of chronic stress and how that impacts us as we're transitioning into new events, new experiences, in this case, back to school. So please take the time to listen to this, even if you aren't necessarily a parent or have a child going back to school, or are someone who is going back to classes and will be having some more pressing concerns academically. I think it's important for everyone to have these resources in mind because we're all impacted. Parents, people know teachers, people know children, people know students, and I think these resources are important to pay attention to. So with that being said, you can get the resources and access in the link provided in the video description of this video. So no worries there. You can sit back, relax, and listen. And I will go through some of the issues at hand, especially today, because unfortunately, the world is not getting any easier, right? Now with the current events the past few years, the economy, changing technology, this is way more intense than typical back to school jitters, or again, as I stated, the academic pressures that ensue when someone shifts from the relaxing days of summer into a more rigid schedule of the fall with the school year. Now, unfortunately, what happens with chronic stress is that it can actually change the neural patterning in the brain and have emotional, physical, and mental health implications. Your nervous system is on high alert, and there's neural connections in your immune system, in your brain, and all throughout your whole body. So it impacts the whole mind body. It isn't just brain fog and mental health. Okay, this is a big deal. And unfortunately, because children's brains are still developing, it can impact our tiny ones even most. And that's why I think there has been such a call for attention to mental health, especially in the youth, as being the most affected. Okay, because especially with the past few years, what we've gone through as a world from 2020 to 2022, now we're coming into the tail end, it's been a lot for kids to deal with. So my goal has been to provide integrative support, and I'm really focused on the topic of mental and emotional health for this reason, because I don't think we have enough resources out there. In fact, we don't. Right? There's known to be a mental health shortage, and we know that even the people who are suffering, they're still not getting the help they need for various reasons, either stigma, they just don't have access, or there just aren't as many providers or the right fit for them. So we need additional supportive mind-body approaches. So what I want to do is, now that we understand kind of the complexity of the situation, and if you want more info on that, then the first video on this topic would be where to go. But let's talk about how specifically we can cope with all of these extreme stressors with someone that already has a mental health diagnosis. So that's on top of it. And then I want to point you in the direction of a toolkit that may help with some additional pressures that the youth is up against today. And then we'll talk about some integrative resources, right? Integrative mental health, naturopathic, and integrative tips for stress relief. We'll talk about cognitive and brain health support, mind-body medicine to ease stress, and essential oils to help balance emotions, mental health, and revive the body. Now, I'm just going to touch really mostly on these topics. I'm going to go kind of in depth into integrative mental health, but the whole point of this video is to take all of these resources that I've put together throughout the years, or I've compiled through other experts and colleagues, and put them in one place for you so that you have something you can go back to and use as a reference and a resource to kind of help you through when situations come up, effective ways to cope, rather than maybe allowing your brain to go in haywire and full speed ahead in a train and we don't know where it's going, right? So take a deep breath. You don't have to know all this straight away. Again, it's a resource video. So let's just talk a little bit about the importance of understanding what happens when someone already has a mental health issue and when they have to transition into, say, back to school, or just a change of events, or maybe even just, transitions in general in life, dealing with that on top of additional stressors. Okay. So a mental health diagnosis would carry additional considerations to handle back to school stress, to handle any stress or transitions, because what happens is people with this brain functioning patterns have a harder time and lack the capability, or I should say they have a different capability to shift from one event or task to the next with fluidity. So what happens is that they already have kind of this brain lock, and then they have this additional strain that's causing more stress. So it makes it even harder to shift. Okay. And this causes more stress, and it could, as a result, impact more symptoms showing up for mental health and stress and burdens. And we know that, right? When we're stressed out, we're not at our best, and we might kind of be reacting to things we normally wouldn't be reacting to, and even lashing out at our loved ones. And we might not even want to. It just kind of, our body physiology takes over. So there is a big distinction between feeling overburdened and overwhelmed and having an anxious mind, right? Once you remove the stress, you can kind of take a deep breath. For someone that doesn't have a psychiatric disorder and they're back to baseline. It isn't true with someone with anxiety or mental health or behavioral issue, right? Their brains function differently. This is at the neurotransmitter level. This is at the neuroendocrine signaling level. It's at the anatomical level, and neuroimaging findings support this. There's also been genetic variations with specific genes that turn on with people with a mental health disorder or diagnosis. So keep that in mind, because when we address mental health, we have to think about getting the proper support for that first before we deal with stressors. So, for example, putting someone with a specific brain type that's diagnosed with ADHD into a quiet room so they can focus harder, that brain type, if they're locked in their prefrontal cortex, that would be the worst thing to do. All right, their anterior cingulate gyrus specifically, because they actually fare worse under pressure. The harder they try, the worse it gets. They should be encouraged, in fact, to be in a relaxed state and even calm, and they might need background, right, to focus. So we have to pay attention to how someone's brain works. And there's also ways that we can look at brain health and help those different patterns that we see. Because remember, I talked about differences in neurochemistry, in neuroendocrine signaling, and anatomical signaling, and genetics. Now, we can't change all that, but we can't change the hardware, but we can change how the software functions. And that is through integrative lifestyle support. It's also been shown with techniques such as cognitive behavioral therapy, where you change kind of the actions and it actually changes how the brain functions. When those two are combined, you can get pretty powerful results. So we can't view anxiety, depression, or other psychiatric disorders as a strict behavioral issue or personality issue, right? We have to look at brain health, because otherwise it's devastating. There's a lot of shame and stigma, and people don't understand it. You can have all the right tools to train for a marathon, but if you have a broken leg, you can use all the tools you want and it's not going anywhere. You're not going to get anywhere. So you have to cast it first, right? Or strengthen the muscles and go through rehabilitation, or just go through extra support that you may need. So for someone that's an integrative health provider, this would be about looking at things such as hormonal balance. There's actually estrogen receptors in the brain, okay? Digestion, nutrient availability, because these impact the nutrients that are needed for brain health and neurotransmitter formation. Underlying infections have been linked to mental health issues, inflammation in the brain we can think about, socioeconomics, lifestyle factors. I mentioned other factors of inflammation besides infections, and neurochemical balance, and a bunch of other things based on the person's health history. These are things I consider every time someone comes in with, no matter what, right? Most people are dealing with stress or anxiety. I'm always thinking about brain health, because the brain, and I even think the heart coherence, really affect a person's biochemistry. And we have to intervene at the level of perception and cause, in my opinion, in order to get the best results for any physical effect. Now, all of these areas I think are best done in conjunction with behavioral treatment with a licensed cognitive behavioral therapist or traditional psychiatry. And if medication is needed to get those neural pathways as they should be. But that is an individual decision, and you want to talk to your doctor about that. So let's talk about just a basic thing, even for someone who might be just experiencing anxious symptoms, but they don't necessarily have an anxious brain. One thing I would be looking at is blood sugar, because if your body being in low blood sugar is a stressful event for the brain. It needs fuel. It panics. It busts out cortisol and all of these different signals that's saying, I need food. And if you're not going to give it to me, let's get energy in another way by increasing stress chemicals in the system. So no matter what you do or how much you talk to somebody about the stressors, it's not going to go away until you feed your body and brain. These are things that we need to consider. Now, on the flip side, you can have the best balanced blood sugar in the world, but if you have emotional trauma that you haven't dealt with, you're not going to get anywhere either. So this is why I think integrative mental health is optimal, and that naturopathic doctors, functional medicine providers can really provide that boost that we aren't seeing shift and move the needle with psychiatric outcomes that we want to see. Okay, so kind of an overview of what we've covered so far. We've talked about all of the stressors of the school year, how that impacts somebody already with a mental health diagnosis, how we need to take care of some basic software things, right? Like lifestyle, how our body physiology is, to fully optimize brain health and cognition. And now I want to talk about how we can use specific tools for this. So I pointed out in the accompanying article to this video, the Mental Health America Toolkit, and that offers downloadable resources and virtual events to help parents and kids emotionally cope better with the increased pressures of today. Now, these are things I didn't necessarily have to deal with in school. Social media bullying, right? How it impacts mental health. What happens when young people lose somebody? There's been more people that have been lost the past few years. Self-esteem, it helps. There's a fact sheet about if there's a hard home life. There's a fact sheet about losing someone you care about, as I said, and social belonging and confidence. So those are just some good tools to take parents and kids through, just so they have some information and an armamentarium to go to when things get tough and certain subjects pop up. Now, I also want to point you in the direction, again, all of this will be in the link to the accompanying article. You go there and you can find them all laid out for you in different sections and find the resources that you need. So I then divided them into 5 categories for integrative back to school stress and just brain support. We have integrative mental health, naturopathic and integrative tips for stress relief, cognitive and brain health support, mind-body medicine to ease stress resources, and a bunch of tools and resources on essential oils for emotions, mental health, and just reviving the mind-body. So under integrative mental health, you'll find things such as weeding out false anxiety, determining if the anxious symptoms are physiological versus psychological, looking at different brain types in children with ADHD, why we should combine more CBT with integrative mental health, which I covered a little bit in this video, but there's also another whole article on it. Foods to nourish the brain, and my two favorite supplements that I give to my clients. Nutrients for mental health, essential oil videos for brain and mental health and stress, my top 5 single oils for anxiety and stress. And then under the naturopathic and integrative stress relief, you're going to find a toolkit for an overwhelmed brain, the different modalities that I use, my top 5. I believe it's 5. The importance of fun music and play, 10 natural ways to relieve stress. You'll get another link for a video with essential oils to ease stress of back to school. And there's a link to a tapping emotional freedom technique that has different resources and different subject matter for parents and kids to tap along with to help ease their stress and anxiety. If you aren't familiar with emotional freedom technique, it's a technique I really highly back for helping the brain and body calm down. It's actually been shown in clinical trials to decrease cortisol and stress, and they've been using it in trials with veterans for PTSD. There's the integrative medicine toolkit, the naturopathic and integrative stress relief that I just went over. And then there's just basic cognitive and brain health support, a few articles on 8 things to consider if you can't focus, 6 herbs that I love for focus and energy, and my top 5 essential oils for fatigue, focus, concentration, and memory. I have some articles on mind, body medicine, and stress, such as meditation, how you can alter your gene software, right? Not your hardware, for mind body stress relief, and using laughter and relaxation, how that benefits the mind body. Then I don't even know if we have time to go through all of the different resources for soothing back to school strain with essential oils. I have a link to a video for memory and cognition. I have a link on how they impact the brain, specifically how they impact neurotransmitters and functioning in biochemistry. So for example, like sage would modulate dopamine and lavender can impact serotonin. I have a post on soothing back to school tensions, not just in the mind, but also in the environment, in a head tension relief blend. I have posts on emotional blends and why we should use them. I have the neurological and psychological effects of essential oil posting, and then an article series on essential oils in the emotional brain, specific blends for heart and stress relief, for tummy tension, grounding, for courage and peaceful calm. And if there's something not there, I have a link to my essential oil database that has hundreds of different articles and topics. So as you can see, there's a lot here. I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but I think that if you do go back and look at that, you'll find, gee, here's a cool article on easing stress, or here's a cool article on essential oils and focus. I've been having a hard time focusing. Maybe I can look at this article. Or, ooh, I know someone that's really dealing with a mental health issue and they're really having a hard time with back to school. Maybe I should check out this article and look at this mental health toolkit that Dr. Sarah talked about. The goal here is to ease your stress and give you resources, not to give you more overwhelm. So again, check this out at the pace that you feel comfortable with. Feel free to reach out with any questions. If there's something I didn't cover and you'd like me to cover, I love that because I'm always looking for topics to write on. And just know that the best thing we can do is really support our kids, really support ourselves, really reach out to other people, and allow yourself to be supported, because we are up against so much and we need each other, right? Isolation is not great for the physical or mental health, and relationships actually help ease stress. So divisions that we've been having the past few years actually can be fueling some of this mental health crisis. So let's try to be kind, let's try to be tolerant, let's try to be a little open-minded and let ourselves heal a little bit with a little less judgment. And I'm not saying that even from a moral issue, I'm saying that from a mental health, physical, mind, body, biochemical reason. So I hope you got something out of this video. I'd love for you to comment. I'd love for you to like it, because the more attention it gets, the more I can do this for free still. because it takes a lot of time and I love doing it and I'd love to keep offering it to you. Please do check out the resources I have available on my website. I will post again another link in the video description. There's classes there, there's free resources, essential oils, and just a free video series even on essential oils for hormonal and brain health. So please do check that out and let me know what you think, okay? Please take gentle care, and I hope that you have a wonderful transition, or at least a more calm transition back to school, and that some of the stuff I said is helpful to you. And I will see you at the next video. So take gentle care until then. Goodbye.